The rustling of dry leaves in the early autumn wind echoed through the desolate canyon, mingling with the soft chirping of insects in the darkness. Pale moonlight filtered through the treetops, casting eerie beams of light across the leaf-strewn ground littered with broken branches. From a distance came the rumble of a heavy truck entering a remote area, its tires crunching over gravel and hard earth. The engine stopped, leaving behind an eerie silence. Heavy footsteps thudded against the ground, followed by hurried breathing and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the leafy forest floor. Then, everything fell quiet. Only the wind whispering through the trees remained, as if the wilderness itself was bearing silent witness to a dark secret just buried. No one could have guessed that this wild, tranquil place would become the final piece in a heartbreaking criminal puzzle. The place that buried the dreams and hopes of a young woman whose life was cut far too short. August 25, 2020, an ordinary late summer day in Tacoma, Washington, became the first day of a long nightmare for the family and friends of Cassandra Cantrell. At 33 years old, Cassandra, affectionately known as Cassie, was a vibrant woman, known for her radiant smile and unshakable optimism. She worked at a local grocery store and was well liked by her co-workers for her enthusiastic personality and willingness to help others. That fateful morning, Cassandra texted her best friend, Angie Nyberg, to share some astonishing news. She was pregnant. This was especially joyful news for Cassandra, who had previously struggled with fertility due to health issues. She had planned to go shopping to prepare for an upcoming Labor Day party, where she intended to share the news with her family and loved ones. But Cassandra never made it to the store. After her last message to Angie, she seemed to vanish into thin air. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and all messages went unanswered, entirely out of character for Cassandra, who was known to reply to calls and texts almost immediately. When a full day passed with no word from Cassandra, Angie grew concerned. She reached out to Marie Smith, Cassandra's mother, to ask if she had heard from her daughter. Marie, initially not too worried, thought perhaps Cassandra was busy or needed some personal time. But as night fell and there was still no word, a creeping sense of fear began to take hold. The next day, when Cassandra failed to show up for work and remained out of contact, Marie decided to call the police. She went to the Pierce County Sheriff's Department to report her daughter missing, bringing recent photos of Cassandra and sharing every detail that might help the search. At first, police treated it as a routine missing person case. Adults voluntarily going off the grid isn't uncommon, and many return within a few days. However, as officers looked deeper into Cassandra's life, red flags began to emerge. She hadn't withdrawn money from her bank account, hadn't used her credit cards, and had left all her personal belongings at home. More troubling was the complete break in communication, highly unusual for someone known to be social and in constant contact with family and friends. In the days that followed, Cassandra's family and friends organized search parties, plastered flyers across Tacoma and surrounding areas, and created social media groups to raise awareness about her disappearance. They gave a detailed description of Cassandra, about 5'7" tall, 120 pounds, with dark brown hair and bright brown eyes. In the shared photos, her radiant smile was her most striking feature, a smile her loved ones feared they might never see in person again. The first major break in the investigation came on August 28th, 3 days after Cassandra vanished, when police found her red Chevrolet Cruze abandoned in a parking lot near the Tacoma Dome, a location about 10 miles from her home. The car was locked and showed no signs of forced entry or struggle. What puzzled investigators was the location. Cassandra had no known reason to be there, and none of her friends or family were aware of any plans to go there. Investigators secured the scene and conducted a thorough forensic examination of the vehicle, collecting fingerprints, DNA samples, and anything else that might provide clues about Cassandra's whereabouts. Inside the car, they found her purse, containing her wallet, ID, and other personal items, but her cell phone was missing, a crucial detail suggesting she hadn't simply walked away. Meanwhile, investigators began interviewing those closest to Cassandra, including her mother, friends, co-workers, and recent romantic contacts. They learned that Cassandra had no known enemies and hadn't shown signs of fear or distress in the days leading up to her disappearance. On the contrary, according to Angie and others, she seemed especially cheerful and optimistic about the future, especially because of her pregnancy. A review of Cassandra's phone records showed that her last known communication was the message to Angie on the morning of August 25. After that, the phone either died or was turned off. However, data from her mobile service provider revealed that the final signal from her phone came from an area near Puget Sound, the large body of water bordering Tacoma and Seattle. This led to a search effort focused on the coastline around Puget Sound, involving police, Coast Guard units, and volunteers. On September 1st, the effort paid off when a coastal patrol team discovered Cassandra's cell phone, discarded on a small beach off Ruston Way, not far from Puget Sound. The phone was water damaged, but forensic specialists hoped to recover data from the device. The discovery intensified investigators' concerns. The fact that Cassandra's car and phone had been found in two separate, distant locations from her home suggested this was not a voluntary disappearance. All signs were now pointing to foul play, and the case shifted from a missing persons report to a potential criminal investigation. As detectives dug deeper into Cassandra's personal life and relationships, one name kept coming up: Colin Dudley. Dudley, 37, was an ex-boyfriend of Cassandra's from back in 2006. Although their romantic relationship had ended years ago, they'd kept in sporadic contact. At first, Dudley was treated as one of many individuals who might have information about Cassandra, and detectives approached him primarily to learn if he knew anything about her plans or whereabouts. In his initial interview, Dudley appeared cooperative but insisted he hadn't seen or spoken to Cassandra in months. He said they were no longer close and had no reason to be in touch. Dudley offered a simple alibi, claiming he was home alone on the day Cassandra disappeared, doing chores around the house and resting. However, when investigators reviewed Cassandra's phone records, a major inconsistency emerged. It turned out that she and Dudley had exchanged numerous calls and texts in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, with their last contact occurring just one day before she vanished. When confronted with this information in a follow-up interview, Dudley changed his story, admitting they had spoken, but still denied seeing her recently. Dudley's conflicting statements raised suspicions, and investigators began focusing more closely on him. They delved into his past relationship with Cassandra and learned that, although their romance had ended years earlier, Dudley seemed to still feel a strong attachment to her. Some of Cassandra's friends described him as possessive and controlling during their relationship, and even after their breakup, he occasionally showed up unannounced at her home or workplace. A critical clue emerged when investigators reviewed surveillance footage from a camera near where Cassandra's car had been found. Footage from a nearby business showed a man matching Dudley's build parking her vehicle at the site around 4:45 p.m. on August 25, just hours after Cassandra went missing. Though the video quality wasn't clear enough to make a definitive identification, the man's height, build, and clothing matched descriptions of Dudley. Based on these findings, investigators obtained a search warrant for Dudley's property, including his Ford F-150 pickup truck and his home in the suburbs of Tacoma. During the search, they didn't find any direct physical evidence linking him to Cassandra, but they did seize his cell phone, computer, and the truck's black box, a device that records data on the vehicle's movements and locations. The analysis of data from this device provided a breakthrough clue. Contrary to Dudley's claims, his truck was not at home all day on August 25. Instead, it traveled to a remote area near Chambers Creek Road, a wooded region about 8 miles west of Dudley's home. The vehicle remained at that location for about an hour before returning to Dudley's house. Notably, the data also showed that the truck had passed through an area near where Cassandra's phone was later found in Puget Sound. When confronted with this new information, Dudley once again changed his story. He admitted to meeting Cassandra on the day she disappeared, saying that she had come to his house to talk about rekindling their past relationship. According to Dudley, after a short conversation, she left peacefully, and he had no knowledge of her disappearance. However, he could not explain why his truck had been in the Chambers Creek Road area or near Puget Sound that day. The ongoing inconsistencies in Dudley's statements, combined with data from his truck and security footage, provided enough evidence to obtain an arrest warrant. On September 8, 2 weeks after Cassandra vanished, Colin Dudley was taken into custody for further questioning about her disappearance. However, there was not yet enough evidence to charge him with any specific crime, and investigators knew they needed to find Cassandra, or at least direct evidence of what had happened to her, to advance the case further. With the new information about Dudley's trip to the Chambers Creek Road area, investigators organized a large-scale search in the wooded region. The vast terrain and difficult landscape with rocky slopes, narrow ravines, and dense vegetation made the search extremely challenging. The search team, comprising police officers, rescue workers, volunteers, and cadaver dogs, spent several days combing through the area, focusing on points that matched the GPS data from Dudley's truck. In the early days, the search yielded no results. There were no signs of Cassandra or any evidence related to her disappearance. Meanwhile, forensic investigators continued analyzing evidence from Cassandra's car and cell phone. Although the phone had been damaged by water, tech experts were able to recover some data, including message history and location tracking. This data confirmed that the phone had traveled from Cassandra's home to Dudley's house on the morning of August 25th, then to the Chambers Creek Road area, and finally to Puget Sound, where it was discarded. This data aligned perfectly with the GPS from Dudley's truck, further reinforcing his connection to Cassandra's disappearance. The forensic examination of Cassandra's vehicle revealed several other crucial clues. Technicians discovered small traces traces of blood on the inside door handle and several strands of hair on the back seat that matched Cassandra's DNA. Additionally, Dudley's fingerprints were found on the steering wheel and rearview mirror, despite his earlier denial of having recently driven her car. As the search around Chambers Creek Road continued, investigators also delved deeper into Dudley's past and his relationship with Cassandra. They discovered that in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Dudley had purchased several suspicious items, including rope, rubber gloves, and industrial cleaning chemicals. These purchases were made using his credit card at a local hardware store and were captured on the store's security cameras. Information from Cassandra's friends and co-workers painted a troubling picture. Many described that, although Cassandra and Dudley had broken up long ago, he still occasionally showed up in her life unannounced and became upset when she dated other people. One of Cassandra's co-workers recalled an incident a few weeks before she disappeared, when Dudley came to her workplace and started a heated argument, accusing her of being unfaithful and lying to him about something. On September 22nd, nearly a month after Cassandra went missing, the tireless search finally led to a breakthrough. A search team working in a narrow, hard-to-reach ravine west of Chambers Creek Road discovered an object wrapped in a blanket and duct tape beneath a large rock. When investigators opened the package, they found the remains of a woman, later confirmed through DNA testing to be Cassandra Cantrell. The initial autopsy revealed the cause of death to be asphyxiation by strangulation. Signs indicated that Cassandra had died on the day she disappeared or shortly thereafter, and her body had been hidden in the remote ravine in a clear attempt to prevent discovery. The location where her remains were found matched the GPS data from Dudley's truck on August 25th, further solidifying his connection to the case. With this discovery, investigators had enough evidence to formally charge Colin Dudley with first-degree murder. He was arrested again, this time on official charges, and held without bail pending trial. Over the following months, Pierce County prosecutors worked to build a solid case against Dudley. While much of the evidence was circumstantial, the combination of various elements, the truck's location, phone data, security footage, Dudley's conflicting statements, and especially the location of Cassandra's body, formed a compelling picture of his guilt. Lead prosecutor Mary Thompson worked closely with investigators to uncover more evidence and testimony that could strengthen the case. They conducted a more thorough search of Dudley's home, looking for anything that could connect him to Cassandra's death. During this second search, investigators found several notable items. In the garage, they discovered a roll of duct tape identical to the one used to wrap Cassandra's body. In the trash behind the house, they found some recently washed clothing that still contained traces of a liquid believed to be blood. Later DNA testing confirmed that the blood on the clothing matched Cassandra's DNA. Additionally, an examination of Dudley's computer revealed a disturbing search history. In the weeks before Cassandra's disappearance, he had searched for topics like how to make someone disappear, blind spots in Tacoma surveillance cameras, and how long does DNA last outside. Most notably, he also searched for fake pregnancy in women and how to tell if someone is lying about being pregnant, searches that seemed directly connected to Cassandra's claim of being pregnant. Investigators also spoke to people who knew Dudley, including co-workers and neighbors. Many described him as a quiet, withdrawn man, but one prone to occasional, unpredictable bouts of anger. One co-worker recalled that in the weeks before Cassandra disappeared, Dudley had become more irritable than usual and often complained about a woman he claimed was trying to ruin his life. The co-worker hadn't realized he was referring to Cassandra until news of her disappearance aired on TV. Another critical factor in the case was establishing motive. Why would Dudley want to kill Cassandra? Through the investigation, a likely scenario began to take shape. Based on messages and emails recovered from Cassandra's phone and computer, investigators believed she had informed Dudley of her pregnancy, possibly asserting that he was the father. Dudley, who had a stable life with a new job and a new, though apparently unofficial and undisclosed, relationship, may have seen this news as a threat. Messages between Cassandra and a close friend showed that she had repeatedly tried to talk to Dudley about the pregnancy in the weeks before she vanished, but he consistently avoided the conversation. In a message sent just days before her disappearance, Cassandra expressed frustration that Dudley refused to accept responsibility and said she would be forced to pursue legal action to ensure support for the child. Prosecutors believe this could have been the catalyst behind Dudley's actions. If Cassandra truly was pregnant with his child and determined to take him to court for support, it could have created enough pressure to push him toward violence. The autopsy confirmed that Cassandra was in the early stages of pregnancy, estimated at 6 to 8 weeks, consistent with the timeline she had shared with her friends. With all this evidence, in November 2020, Colin Dudley was officially charged with aggravated first-degree murder, facing the possibility of life in prison without parole if convicted. He continued to deny all charges and hired an experienced defense attorney, preparing for a long legal battle. Dudley's trial was initially scheduled for early 2022, but faced multiple delays due to legal and procedural issues, as well as the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the court system. While waiting, Cassandra's family and friends continued to advocate to ensure the case would not be forgotten. They held memorials, spoke to the media, and maintained a presence on social media to keep Cassandra's story alive in the public eye. Marie Smith, Cassandra's mother, became the most vocal advocate for her daughter. In many interviews, she described Cassandra as a vibrant, passionate, and loving woman who was always ready to help others and had a special ability to make people laugh even in tough situations. Marie emphasized that Cassandra had been thrilled about her pregnancy and had started making plans for her future with the baby, a future she never got to live. In April 2022, nearly 2 years after Cassandra's disappearance, Colin Dudley's trial finally began at the Pierce County Superior Court. The courtroom was packed with Cassandra's friends and family, as well as reporters and concerned community members who had followed the widely publicized case. In the opening statements, prosecutor Mary Thompson painted a clear picture of Dudley's actions. According to her, Dudley lured Cassandra to his house on August 25, 2020, possibly with the promise of discussing her pregnancy. There, he killed her, likely through strangulation, and later transported her body to the remote ravine at Chambers Creek Road. He then returned, took Cassandra's car to the Tacoma Dome and abandoned it, and finally discarded her phone in Puget Sound on the way home. Dudley's defense team, led by veteran attorney Richard Brennan, focused on casting doubt on the circumstantial evidence. They argued that while Dudley may have seen Cassandra on the day she disappeared, there was no direct evidence proving he caused her death. They suggested that someone else might have harmed Cassandra after she left Dudley's home, and if Dudley had any role in moving or hiding the body, it was out of panic rather than guilt over killing her. The defense team also attempted to question the reliability of the technical evidence, including GPS data from Dudley's truck and location information from Cassandra's cell phone. They argued that the data could be inaccurate or possibly misinterpreted. However, as the trial progressed, the strength of the evidence against Dudley became increasingly clear. Expert witnesses from the FBI and local law enforcement agencies provided detailed testimony on how the location data and forensic evidence were collected and analyzed. They explained that the likelihood of all these elements, from GPS data to DNA and security footage, matching randomly without being related to the crime, was extremely low. Particularly compelling was the testimony of Dr. Emily Crawford, an expert in vehicle GPS tracking devices, who explained in detail how the black box in Dudley's truck had accurately recorded the vehicle's movements. The data showed that the truck had stopped precisely at the location where Cassandra's body was found for about 47 minutes on the day she went missing, then moved to the area near the Tacoma Dome where her car was found, and finally to the Puget Sound area where her phone was discarded. A critical moment in the trial came when prosecutor Thompson presented Dudley's internet search history. In front of the entire courtroom, she displayed a list of disturbing searches Dudley had conducted in the weeks before Cassandra disappeared, including phrases like destroy DNA, surveillance camera, blind spots, and fake pregnancy. These searches, combined with purchases of rope and cleaning chemicals, painted a picture of someone who had meticulously planned his actions. After 2 weeks of evidence and arguments, the case took an unexpected turn. Faced with the mounting evidence against his client, Attorney Brennan approached Prosecutor Thompson to discuss the possibility of a plea deal. After several hours of negotiations, an agreement was reached. Dudley would plead guilty to first-degree murder, and in return, the prosecutor would not seek the maximum sentence of life without parole. On April 28, 2022, Colin Dudley formally pled guilty to the murder of Cassandra Cantrell. In his courtroom statement, he admitted to luring Cassandra to his home to discuss her pregnancy and, in a sudden fit of rage, strangling her to death. He then tried to cover up his crime by hiding her body in a remote ravine and disposing of her car and phone in different locations to confuse investigators. Judge Michael Rodriguez sentenced Dudley to 26 years in prison, with the possibility of parole review after serving his term. While not the maximum possible sentence, it ensured that Dudley would spend the majority of his life behind bars and, more importantly, provided closure to Cassandra's family without the need for a longer and more painful trial. The response to Dudley's sentencing within the community, and particularly from Cassandra's family, was complex. While there was relief that justice had finally been served, there was also anger and frustration frustration that Dudley was allowed to accept a plea deal instead of facing a full trial with a potentially harsher sentence. Marie Smith, in an emotional statement after the trial, expressed her mixed feelings. Although she was grateful that the case had been resolved and Cassandra's body had been found and could be properly laid to rest, she still felt that 26 years was not enough for someone who had taken the life of her daughter and unborn grandchild. She described the pain of knowing that Cassandra had lost the chance to become a mother, something she had longed for. Angie Nyberg, Cassandra's best friend and the last person to receive a message from her about the pregnancy, also expressed outrage over the plea deal. She believed Dudley's actions were carefully premeditated and that he deserved the full weight of the law. She established a memorial fund in Cassandra's name to support victims of domestic violence and struggling single mothers, a way to honor her lost friend in a way she believed Cassandra would have wanted. Prosecutor Mary Thompson defended the decision to accept the plea deal, explaining that although the evidence against Dudley was strong, there remained a risk that a jury might not convict him of the highest degree of murder due to the circumstantial nature of much of the evidence. By securing a long and certain sentence through a plea agreement, the prosecution ensured Dudley would be held accountable without the risk of acquittal or a lesser conviction. The Cassandra Cantrell case had a profound impact on the Tacoma community, raising awareness about domestic violence and the potential dangers of maintaining contact with former partners who exhibit possessive or controlling behavior. Several local organizations used the case to strengthen educational programs aimed at helping people recognize early warning signs of dangerous behavior and know how to seek help when needed. For the Pierce County Police Department, the case became a textbook example of the value of modern technology in criminal investigations. The use of GPS data from vehicles, cell phone analysis, and the discovery of internet search history played a key role in building the case against Dudley. The department has since used the lessons from this case to improve investigator training on how to use and interpret these types of digital evidence. A year after the trial, on August 25, 2023, a special memorial was held for Cassandra in a Tacoma park. Hundreds of people attended, including family, friends, and even strangers who had been touched by her story. The ceremony included the release of purple balloons, Cassandra's favorite color, each attached with a personal message and a flower seed, symbolizing the growth and hope that can emerge even from the most tragic circumstances. During the ceremony, Marie Smith announced the founding of the Cassandra Cantrell Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting pregnant women in crisis and providing resources to those trying to escape dangerous relationships. The foundation quickly gained support from the local community, including donations from businesses and individuals moved by Cassandra's story. For Cassandra's loved ones, the healing process continues. While nothing can bring her back or completely erase the pain of her loss, knowing that the person responsible was brought to justice has brought some measure of closure. They continue to honor her legacy by living according to the values she held dear: kindness, generosity, and the ability to find joy even in the darkest times. Cassandra Cantrell's story continues to inspire efforts to improve the legal system and safety nets for vulnerable individuals. In a major development in 2023, the Washington State Legislature passed the Cassandra Act, a law that strengthens protections for pregnant women facing violence or threats from current or former partners. As time passes, the details of the criminal case may fade from collective memory, but Cassandra Cantrell's legacy lives on in the lives she touched, the people helped by the foundation bearing her name, and the positive changes to the system inspired by her tragic story. In her death, she became a symbol of the urgent need to recognize and confront domestic violence, and a reminder that behind every headline about a murder is a real person deeply loved, with hopes, dreams, and unrealized potential. In the quiet nights at the ravine where Cassandra was last found, it said the wind still whispers through the trees, carrying the echoes of a life cut too short. But now, that whisper also carries another message, a promise that from tragedy can come change, from grief can come purpose, and from the saddest stories can rise hope for a future where deaths like Cassandra's become less common, because deaths like Cassandra's become less common. Learn to recognize the warning signs and intervene before it's too late.